one of the things that's happened in the kind of the gig economy, and again, I realize there are many of you out there watching this that are not doing an entrepreneurial or a gig kind of role. You're going into an office or going to office some of the time and collecting your paycheck for what you do, and maybe getting a bonus at the end of the year or something. But for those of us who are working differently, our compensation models are entirely different, and they're independent. They composed of many different things. So it's like, what's fair? If you're gone for a month, then should you not be paid that month's retainer? Or is it that the paying of it monthly is just a way to manage the retainer when it's a retainer-based business, and that the work fluctuates, which is how I run a retainer with my clients. Is I say, look, I'm going to let you know this is the kind of the amount of time that you're getting from me approximately, but that might go up or down, from month to month, depending on what we want, as long as we look at it and say that we're getting the value that we've agreed upon over the aggregate, then we're in a good spot. That's the kind of thing that allows me to be gone for a week of vacation and do less work, maybe check in on something, or maybe not check in at all and move things out, or even, as you talked about, moving it out to either end of a month and having something set up automatically in between. All that to say, I don't know that there is a best practice, and you know that I'm kind of suspicious of that phrase to begin with, but I do think that there is a real opportunity to have great dialogue and conversation with your clients or with the people you work with about, what do I do for you, and what's the value, and how do we handle compensation or remuneration accordingly? Because that's always, not always, but in the vast majority of cases, it's the difficult thing for people to talk about, right? And it's like, how are we gauging the value? One of the, I guess, nice things about having a traditional job is you've decided, you've agreed on the compensation structure, and it's kind of set in place and nobody pays attention to it. But, instead of getting a monthly paycheck or a bi-monthly paycheck that just comes automatically, people like you and I, we send an invoice. And so it's much more active a conversation. And I think that I think that things like this and living with the balance of life and when you're going to be working and when you're not going to be working is really an important conversation to have. And I think that it's an important conversation for everyone to have, because we're seeing this even more and more inside your standard organizations now, that, well, what days can I work from the office? Well, what times can I say I'm going to take the morning off to deal with this with the children, but I'm going to get some stuff done in the evening? And we've realized it's the 8 to 5 doesn't exist anymore. 9 to 5, basically it's just a Dolly Parton song at this point. It's not reflecting a reality for anyone, even though some look more like it than don't. And so the only way to deal with that, whether you're an entrepreneur like us or in an organization, is have the conversation of like, what are we working on? What is the value that you are getting for the investment you're making? And how does that show up? And I think that when it starts to get away from, and there are plenty of entrepreneurs out there that are doing hourly work, saying it's going to take 6 hours to do this. You pay me for 6 hours, I'll do it whenever. Or ones that are showing up to fill in a gap for a period of time and getting paid for that. But more and more people are charging for the value that they create. And more people are willing to pay for the value that they create. And to do that, you really have to talk about value, and you have to talk about value both in the short term and over the long term. And so I think this really begs the question of, are you clear on the value that you add, and have you gotten clear with the people that are paying you that that's the value they're getting, because then you have a grounds to work from? If you haven't had that, then you're going to run into those times where it's like, well, I don't want to pay you anything, you're gone that month. Well, wait a minute, I did all this work ahead of time and have all this stuff set up and did that, so you're getting all the value. If you have a misalignment about what you're paying for, time or value, it's really going to come back to haunt you someday. So the time or value conversation is one that I think is, for lack of having fewer words to use here, timely, that we should be talking about in just about all fields of work.